Thanks for tuning into this episode of FinTech Focus TV, powered by Harrington Starr, the global leaders in financial technology recruitment. Head over to the Harrington Starr website where you'll be able to find all the latest jobs in financial technology across the globe. You'll also be able to download the latest issue of the Financial Technologist magazine, including the Top 1% Workplace Awards. Finally, if you're looking to grow your team, please get in touch. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today I am absolutely thrilled. Recently we got a press release through talking about some sterling work that's happening over at the Gillmore Centre for Financial Technology over at the Warwick Business School. And today it is my absolute pleasure to bring to you the director of the centre itself. It's Ram Gopal. Ram, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Toby. Thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure. I look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Well, look, I'm looking forward to this as well because it's something which I genuinely believe in. The thing that really sort of, I think, drew my attention to the press release that we got sent through was talking about the chronic skills gap we've got in technology. And I think in 2023, when you're seeing tech layoffs and various bits and pieces in the press, in the mainstream press, it suddenly gets everyone very complacent again about what's happening in the marketplace. But what's happening, I think, is the press is sort of masking a very serious problem around what's only going to get bigger and bigger, and that's the technology skills gap. And it's people like you and the team over at the Gillmore Centre who I think are doing fantastic things to sort of take that further forward and safeguard the future and safeguard the UK actually as a centre for fintech excellence, which it's been. But I think with growing pressures around Brexit and cost of talent and importing that talent, etc., we need to make sure we're continuing pushing that forward. So we've got loads and loads. It's a subject I'm very passionate about. It's a subject I'm guessing you're even more passionate about. So together we've got lots to talk about today. So Ram, before we get into all of that, I'm just going to ask you to give a little bit of intro. I told you beforehand I didn't want you to spoil me by saying it twice. So I'm looking forward to this as much as our audience right now. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey, your story.
Thanks, Toby. Well, I would say that I think of myself as a through and through academic. So born and bred in academia. Got my PhD about 30 years ago, dating myself, and I spent 25 years in the US. And then I spent about a year between China and India. And I was working with various business schools there to develop their analytics strategy. And then I moved to Warwick in January of 2020. Since I moved, the very first responsibility given to me was to lead this new FinTech center called Gillmore Centre for Financial Technology. So in terms of my background, I'm at the intersection of technology and business. So I'm in a group called Information Systems and Analytics. So throughout my professional career, I've been really fascinated by how technology fundamentally changes organizations, fundamentally changes industries. So early in my career, I started looking at how digitisation was impacting both software, music, and eventually video industry. It's just amazing to see the record sales, pre-Napster, post-Napster. It's like a vertical drop. Right? It's really fascinating. And I dug into the economics behind it and what can these companies do in the face of digitization. And over the years, I've worked at the intersection of IT and different industries, including retail, healthcare, and of late, I'm very into FinTech. And I think that's a fundamentally important sector, I think. Overall, based on my experience, people fundamentally care about health and wealth, right? And the two largest sectors in the economy are health and finance, and finance in particular is it's a really fascinating area because there's so much variation globally. There are countries where the percentage of people unbanked is upwards of 50%. Right? Wonder how do they even go about their daily activities, and there's a lot that FinTech has to offer.
it's a phenomenal sector as well, isn't it? And I think there's so much potential for it to, when we first launched the business, we looked at all the various different sectors which we can do. My background for 10 years beforehand had been in technology, predominantly finance, and when we looked at where growth had to happen and when we looked at where opportunity is, and this comes from a capital markets background through to all the B2C areas that you look at alongside it, payments, etc., and the massive unbanked opportunity that you're looking at out there as well to make a much more stable future. I think there's it is without question one of those really exciting places to come into. So you mentioned there that 2020 was the year that you arrived to at Warwick to start the Gillmore Centre. Tell me what the thinking behind the Gillmore Centre and what the sort of mission of the centre is.
Yeah, well, the Gillmore Centre was founded thanks to our generous donor, Mr. Clive Gillmore, and his vision was for us to be research focused and become thought leaders for the UK FinTech sector. And that's the broad vision that he set out for us. And he gave us a lot of freedom in terms of what we do. And about an amazing team of folks to work with, not just professors in Warwick Business School, but also we have a number of colleagues who in the industry, in the financial services industry, that work with us very closely. And I think that collaboration was really very fruitful. So I would say that our model at the moment is what we call the 4 I's. So the first I is the invention, that's the research bit. That's the fundamental research. And at the moment, there are 2 pillars that we're focusing on. One is blockchain crypto, and the other bit is about AI, in particular generative AI. So the idea there is to look at whenever technology impacts consumers in their financial activities, how can we help? So that's the process there. So that's the invention bit. The second bit is the innovation bit, where we can take the fundamental inventions and bring it to businesses. And so this has a lot to do with engaging with policymakers and also engaging with FinTech, small FinTech startups as well as large financial services companies. So that's the innovation bit. And the third bit, which is also important, given that we are an academic institution at the end of the day, is the instruction bit. We take it upon ourselves that our responsibility is to develop the FinTech talent that is needed in the future. So that's important for us. And as part of that, we are in the process of starting a new MSc program in FinTech, which hopefully will launch in early 2025.
Amazing.
So that's the 3 I's, and the 4th are the overarching one, and that is impact. And what we don't want to do is to teach a course for which there is no demand, there's no impact. Research that doesn't translate to value for organizations.
Do you know what? I'm so pleased you said that, because I think it is a problem of FinTech full stop, is it's often answering questions that don't need to be answered. And that's where you see the failure ratio, in my opinion, of so many FinTechs that don't work out, is generally because they're very clever technologists who haven't necessarily looked at the business side of things. And that sort of intersection you talk about, I think, is so important in terms of where you are. And I think that's that to me was what really caught the eye when I first sort of started finding out and gathered some more information about the Gillmore Centre. The UK's position, and I guess the strength has always been its ability to attract and source some of the best talent and have some of the best academic centres to churn out the best talent in Europe. London has long been the sort of seen as the FinTech capital of the world, arguably with New York. And I think if you look at the overarching reason for that, it would be probably put around that talent area. I was stunned in some of the stats that got sent through to me in the initial introduction to you guys, which talked about, and I'm reading this down here now because I want to get it right. 64th, the UK 64th globally in skills development, which was a staggering number from where we want to go. In the press release that got through, it was sort of quoted ITG's Deputy CEO John Kirk as well, who was talking about the sort of need for talent, which is something which is a a conversation that runs through all of the conversations I have with leaders across the space. Everyone recognizes the fuel of great companies is great talent. And I think sometimes when we look at the problem of skills and needing to grow companies quickly, we kind of forget the next wave and the next generation to come through. And I think it's really interesting that in slowdowns like the pandemic, as a, for example, 2008, definitely, even going back to my time looking at the dot-com bubble and the impact it had on tech at that sort of stage, is you have missing generations of people coming through where people don't invest in I guess, the next generation of talent coming through. And I'm concerned that our ability to continue to invest in future skills and having and having the people, the generation who are able to come through and perform to keep driving the UK further forward is getting stifled slightly, which is why I'm really interested to hear your views on how you sort of broach that gap, how you can help within that, but also, and this is sort of rolling two questions into one, I know this is something you're passionate about as well, is about how academia and business can work together, because I think they've sort of been strange bedfellows for some time, haven't they? And putting that together, I think, creates a massive opportunity. So, Ram, tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, well, first of all, try not to scare you, but some of the numbers that I see are even scarier than the numbers that you quoted, Toby. Here's some more statistics. Yeah. The number of young people taking IT subjects in GCSEs has dropped by 40% since 2015. And
wow.
Of course, only 9% are female. So there's a huge gender issue in the tech industry and in FinTech in particular. Only 17% of UK organizations are confident that they have the talent pool to compete in the digital economy. Vacancies for tech roles in the UK financial services jumped 36%.
Yeah.
Here's the scariest one. UK government estimates a need for 600,000 tech workers by 2030.
Yeah.
At the pipeline to develop this level of tech talent. Simply don't.
And that's additional tech talent to what's there today. Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
And despite the fact that it is an amazing industry in the sense that the average tech salary in the UK is £62,000, which is twice the average household income in the UK. Right?
Yeah.
This financial attractiveness of it is simply not finding the talent pool. So thinking about why is that, right? And I think it starts. Just look at it from as a pipeline perspective. It all starts with secondary education. So many of the students are not interested in tech jobs, either because they think it's too geeky, it's too boring. Especially females are not as attracted to tech as they should be. There is lack of awareness. That's a huge issue. Because of that, at the top end of the funnel, it's really beginning to grow. There's less and less number of people with possible talent coming into this. Now, even those who get in, once they go into universities, the problem there is that the number of spots in tech, computer science are limited. They're oversubscribed, and most universities don't have enough professors to teach these classes. Yeah. So again, you're losing some significant chunk of the talent. Now, even if you go past that, let's say you graduate people with the right set of skills, they enter the industry, and within 2 or 3 years, the skills they learned in academia are now outdated. So they need to reskill, they need to upskill. And unfortunately, at least in the UK, most companies do not invest enough in upskilling their employees. So it's a problem throughout the pipeline from my perspective.
It's incredible. I mean, I'm stunned by that first fact that you you threw out there about 40% drop in GCSE around technology, because intuitively you think about that and you think about the sort of increasing prominence of technology in our day-to-day lives, right? And you look at that generation and you think they're digitally native. And children growing up with iPads and computers, etc. It's a stunning statistic. And look, I think that the sort of shape of historically, when you mentioned there about it being geeky or what have you, I think that's almost moving further and further away. So it's a very interesting sort of thing, and that we're very aware of the the diversity issue within the space, and how we can work on that side of things. But to see those sort of numbers and it being in arrest as opposed to anything else is a stunning piece. Coming back, carry on.
There are good reasons for that. I think part of the challenge is that the tech evolves so rapidly that skills you need to be competent is ever increasing. So we compare to a career in tech to something that is, let's say, not tech focused. The amount of constant updating of your skills is much more significant in the tech space than the non-tech space. That probably is one of the problems as well. And
yeah, true.
And I think also the young people don't see the potential of technology to change the world. You're talking about inclusion, you're talking about tackling climate crisis, sustainability, healthcare. I think tech has a huge role to play. It's just that that is not getting down to them.
So how does the message change? Because this isn't a new problem, right? We've known it's there. It's probably just it's becoming a bigger problem. It's not a new problem. It's just becoming a bigger problem as the need for technology and the need for us to sort of recognize it as I think the economic driver for growth in this country over the next 5 to 10 years. It has to be around the ability to create tech talent. What's missing in the messaging at the moment?
Well, I think this is not, as I said, Toby, it's not a new problem, right? In fact, I'm in a group called Information Systems. So it's basically the convergence of technology and business. Basically, students needed to have enough skills, both in technology and in business. And it took a long time for us to attract students, bring awareness. And even today, when you take a look at the graduates in business schools, and they graduate with various majors, finance, accounting, marketing, and so on, the majors that fetches the highest starting salaries are information systems, that tech and business. So there is a demand there, and it is certainly worthwhile to pursue, but it is challenging. I think students who are interested in business per se are usually not so interested in tech, and vice versa. And it gets worse, I think, in the sense that it needs skills at the intersection of technology, business, finance, and increasingly law and regulation. Also understand more about the consumer behavior. So I think what's happening overall is that in academia, we used to think of these distinct subject areas. I think the world is changing where it's becoming a lot more interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
When we're putting together our curriculum for the FinTech course, it's not just one group. It's a combination of folks from information systems, from finance. You're tapping into folks from computer science, economics, law. So I think the subject matter itself is getting so interdisciplinary. And we are simply not equipped because we still have this siloed mentality. Right? That becomes a challenge. I think UK in particular is a problem because the education institutions here have very traditional values. They've been around for 800 plus years. I think Warwick to some extent is different because it's a newer university. It's a lot more nimble. So we are able to do things that I think are difficult for some other universities to emulate us. And that's a problem. I think one thing that remains a problem, and I've seen this not just in the UK, I've seen this in the US, I've seen this in India, in China. There seems to be a wall between academia and business.
Exactly, yeah.
Almost as if we train students, and then once they're ready to graduate, we literally throw them over the wall to industry and tell them, okay, it's your problem now, right?
With very, very little sort of guidance at various stages. When I go back to my time at university, and it's we're going back a while now, but when we go back to that sort of time, I felt the sort of guidance onwards was almost non-existent, and I feel now that there's probably a little bit of a better play around that. But I still do. I think the two worlds are are very separate. Tell me how you're breaching that.
Well, our strategy to breach that is through the Gillmore Centre. So what the center does is, number one, it does fundamental research, and so that we can actually work with companies to look at their challenges and bring our faculty or students to tackle some of the cutting edge problems. So that's one bit of it. The second bit of it is that because it's a center, it cuts across the disciplinary areas. So we have folks from all parts of the university who are engaging with us, who are interested in the FinTech space. Maybe some are interested from a legal perspective, some from a crypto perspective, and so on. But we bring them all together as one unit, and that helps. The other bit, which I think is very unique to our Gillmore Centre, is that we have actually set up a lab, and people's reaction when I tell them this is usually very puzzled. It's usually sciences and engineering that have labs. Right? Why is it that a business school needs a lab?
Yeah,
it's about technology. The technology
innovation labs, right? Yeah.
And now we're talking about crypto, blockchain technologies, AI technologies. We're also investing quite heavily in AR and VR, because it's the future of education, where we learn much more if we are in immersive environments, especially complicated topics like crypto, blockchain. These are very hard concepts to teach using books and PowerPoint slides.
Absolutely.
This immersive environments, I think all of a sudden the value of learning goes up quite dramatically. So we have this space where we have students come in to play with technology. We have clients that can come in and we can work on the problems. So our goal eventually is, because we are in Midlands, we want to become the intellectual home of the FinTech companies in West Midlands. So that's the goal, and I think that's how you bridge the gap between academia and industry. And we are involving many of our corporate partners pretty heavily in structuring and hopefully eventually even in terms of delivering some of the content for the MSc in FinTech.
I think it's really important, isn't it? Because that sort of feedback between the two about what's relevant has often been the issue, isn't it? Where you finish a degree and you've got a view of the world, and that's, you go back to traditions of, establishments that have been going for a long time. This is how we've always done it. It doesn't necessarily evolve at the same pace as the outside world. When you're talking about a financial technology landscape that's evolving at record space and doesn't show any signs of abating at the moment, that freshness of the course has to be delivered. And I think the ability to talk and get input on that from business is incredibly important as well. Tell me how that engagement works, how you work with business, and what's the best, what are one of the benefits on both sides of that partnership?
Well, it's definitely beneficial for both sides in terms of creating the tech talent, right? Because eventually we train them, we send them over to industry. Industry benefits if they get trained the proper way, right? They get trained on the right set of things. They get trained properly so that once they join the real world, so to speak, they can hit the ground running. That can only happen if they engage. So there is actually an incentive for companies to engage with academia. And for academia, I think the more we learn about some of the challenges that companies face, the more we learn about how companies perceive the direction of travel in terms of technology and the business landscape, better off we are in terms of updating our curriculum. I think that's where the collaboration becomes really useful. And also in terms of, it's not just creating the tech talent, but also oftentimes companies have this larger challenges that can only be solved through somebody in academia, because they have that depth of knowledge in terms of when they talk about business, law, economics, and all of that. And so sometimes these small tech companies don't simply have the bandwidth to undertake fundamental research. We can do so for them. That's a real win-win.
Definitely is.
For that to happen, both parties need to have skin in the game, so to speak. And that's what we're trying to build with the Gillmore Centre.
And tell me about some of the success stories. So this has been running for 3.5 years, so it might be a little bit early to go through that. But what are you excited about with the Gillmore Centre, and where do you think the impact can be?
Well, I think we want to have impact in all the eyes that I mentioned earlier, right? Some of the research that we have conducted over the last 3.5 years has been hugely impactful. It appears in some of the top journals. We host lots of symposia and workshops that attract the best talent in the world. So that way, we are actually enhancing information dissemination. Host lots of activities for students who are interested in fintech. They come and learn about fintech. So we are upskilling their fintech skills. I think another piece of it is to also work with regulators. We have a number of faculty in a finance group that work on CBDCs and stablecoins. So they work closely with the Bank of England and they're providing input to the task force looking at the Bitcoin, so to speak. That's the CBDC version from the UK. So I think we are engaging with policymakers is hugely beneficial. Working with companies is hugely beneficial, and actually even our faculty and students, the fact that the center provides them both the resources and opportunities to work on really interesting research problems, that's exciting. And it's great for the students to come in. Now, when they get access to the technology, all of a sudden the light bulbs go off and they start working on really cool stuff. So all of that has been really interesting. So for us, it's the idea of creating an ecosystem around fintech, where everybody comes together. There is knowledge sharing. It's the synergy between students, professors, industry, policymakers. That's what creates value.
It's massive. It's so exciting to see the potential of it all, isn't it? And let's sort of move on that, because we've sort of given some fairly damning statistics. We've talked about the fact that academia and business both need to be doing better in this sort of thing. Let's move on to the promised land of what's exciting and what can happen when we get this right. What do you're obviously confident in what the centre's doing. You're obviously confident in what can be done in the space. You mentioned that sort of 600,000 number by 2030, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Over the next sort of 5-10 years or so, how do you think what do you think the future looks like? Can we look forward to this with some promise? Do you think we can get this right as an academic and business sectors, and what needs to happen to make it really thrive?
Well, I think it's a problem that, in my view, is solvable.
Yeah.
But it requires academia, it requires industry, and it requires government to come together to solve the issues in a synchronized, coordinated way. So the way I think about this whole issue,
and those sort of groups haven't necessarily always worked in a synchronized, coordinated way, right?
That exactly is the problem, right? So I think of it like a production system, so to speak, right? I think of academia as a machine that produces. In fact, the old joke is that people sometimes mistake that the students that we have are our customers. And our answer is that no, students are not our customers. Students are a product. Our customers are the industry. Right? So our job is to produce the talent that the industry needs. Right? Our clients, our customers are the companies that hire talent. Then we have
absolute sense.
Then we have our inputs. Our inputs are the students coming in, and that's the talent pool, and that's our supply. That's our raw material. And the way I think about it is that the government acts as a larger company that owns the production system, right? And what they can do is to allocate resources appropriately and also set in policies and regulation. And at least from my perspective, the UK government is doing certain things right. I think in terms of changing the visa regulations to attract tech talent into UK, that's a step in the right direction. And I think it's also good that they are also pro-innovation when it comes to innovation. I think FCA sandbox environment is a fantastic way for FinTechs to experiment. So they are certainly doing certain things right, but I think there are still challenges. The issue of this perception that the tech is not a promising career for young folks, that needs to be overcome. That's
Absolutely.
Part the government, in part academia, in part the industry, and in part the society, its family, friends. I guess so that's a broader issue that needs to be tackled. And in terms of resources, I think government can do more in terms of providing resources to academia. Just give an example from what we are facing. So we are in the process of trying to get an MSc in FinTech. Now that obviously requires resources. So when we're planning this new program in place, it's not as if we're taking something that exists, we're removing it and redirecting resources. We just need to have additional resources to do this. Warwick is fortunate that it's a very well-run business school, so we can do that, but not every business school is fortunate enough to do that. So I think additional resources to academia, especially to launch programs that are aligned with where the future needs are, that's important. Another thing that always puzzles me is that having spent so much time in the US, one big difference is that there are a lot of companies and even private donors that fund research centers. In UK, it's minimal. In fact, the Gillmore Centre is the first privately funded center in the entire history of the Warwick.
Amazing, isn't it?
And the reason for that is simple. It has to do with the legislation, with how taxes are structured. There are tax benefits in the US for companies to engage better with academia. And I think that's something that I would love to see the government think more about in the incentivize companies.
I think that's so important, isn't it? Because there's been numerous examples recently of the government showcasing themselves to be very, very pro-business, and particularly to be very, very pro technology. We saw it recently in UK Tech Week, where Rishi Sunak was talking about making it a crypto center of the world, et cetera, in terms of the opportunity, particularly with the states being regulating crypto more or less out of their economy. It could be argued. So there's this golden opportunity at the moment, and I think you're right that promoting those opportunities for it to be as attractive as possible for every single person into it, because my biggest takeaway from this is I find it extraordinary that people will be looking at technology and not recognizing the power of opportunity that sits within it. And within that, the earning potential. I mean, it is without doubt going to be the vehicle for the highest elements of economic growth for the vast majority of people. So people should be, channeling themselves into that sort of space and the opportunities within it. So I think it's a fascinating conundrum, and I'm really pleased to see the likes of yourselves and what you're doing at the Gillmore Centre, being so pioneering and actually looking to provide some solutions to that, because everyone likes to whinge about it, right? But not too many people like to come up with solutions for it. Ram, I know that sat patiently next to you is your book as well, and I promised to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit more about this as well. So show it to the camera. There it is. Tell us a little bit about the book and what we can expect to see in it as well.
This is a labor of love, and took over 3 years with two fantastic colleagues, Dan Folks, who actually is an investment manager, and Tillman Wade, who is a professor in data science at the City University of London. Well, the background to this book is that I started an MSc program in analytics back in the US in 2011. It's one of the first MSc programs in data science, and quickly realized that it's very difficult for students to learn the concepts right, because they needed to understand programming, because it's all computer based. They need to understand statistics, because that forms the foundation of how we learn. And they need to understand business so that you have the right machine learning solutions to the problems. And you always had students who were good in one but not the other. There's something always missing. And there was no textbook that I could find that does justice to all three aspects of it. So over the years, I was just making my own set of notes, my own examples, and and I used to just give it to students. It took about 6-7 years of doing that, and students often used to comment that, all this stuff is great. Why didn't you write a book about it? And when I met up with my wonderful co-authors, and we decided, okay, we'll waste, or at least part of the weekends for the next 2-3 years, and let's get this done. So we just got the book published in May, and
Fantastic.
the notion of it is that it's really about understanding things from first principles. That's where your eyes light up. That's where the light bulbs. Yeah. You need to have that inspiring, approachable way to get into these topics. So I'm really glad that we walked through it and it's out there.
3 years of sacrifice weekends. I can see the pride coming through in your face around it as well, around. Listen, I told you it would go quickly as it has, and I feel like there's loads more to cover in this, and definitely we should be engaging more and doing more stuff with you, and hopefully you'll be part of the whole story, because this is something as a business we've been continuously passionate about, and we've worked with other universities and look to add as much value as we can, because I am, as I said at the top of the show, hugely passionate that the country maintains an advantage from investing in tech talent, and making sure that we have the diversity, making sure that we have the skills and development through to that to make those figures we spoke about at the start of the show, the mockery that they are. So I'm really excited to hear more about the Gillmore Centre. I'm really pleased to see Warwick, as I said before, as an alumni that we've had from the university in here. They're absolutely world class, and I think it's been a centre that a university that's well renowned for creating great talent. So very, very excited to see what you're doing with it all and how it all shapes up as well. I can tell you, Toby, that UK is in the prime location from my perspective, right? It's one of geographically it's perfect, right? It's fantastic, right? In the middle of between US and Asia and Africa, right? The right location. It's I guess the only primarily English-speaking country within Europe that makes it easier to attract talent to come into the UK, because at least you don't have the language barriers. It's tradition of innovation, and it's one of the most multicultural countries. And so all the ingredients are there. You just need to pull it together. I think that's the challenge. And at least from the Gillmore Centre point of view, we're doing our bit. Well, it certainly sounds like you are, and I'm pleased to see it. Long may it continue. Ram, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks so much for joining us and telling us a little bit more about it. If people want to get in touch and find out more about the Gillmore Centre, more about yourself, buy the book, whatever it may be at the very least, what's the best way for everyone to get in touch with you? Well, they can email me directly, ram.gopal@wbs.ac.uk. Or if you go to the Warwick Business School site, you can easily find the Gillmore Centre. There's email contact, reach out to us. And we do lots of online activities as well, webinar, symposia. Everybody's welcome. And Toby, I would love to have some formal collaboration between yourself and the Gillmore Centre as well. But certainly welcome that. We'd love to do that as well. So that's a to be continued for sure. And looking forward to carrying that off air. Ram, it's been great having you on the show today. Thanks for joining us. And thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as I have. I think it's really, really important. And we will see you very soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.